It's kind of hard to imagine a time when Star Wars was not a part of the Disney parks. Before George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney in 2012, Star Tours and Star Wars weekends were extremely popular attractions. But how do we go from a single attraction in Anaheim in the 80s to the biggest themed land in Disney's history? Let's jump to Lightspeed to find out. It may be a shock, but in 1977, Disney did not want anything to do with Star Wars. George Lucas's Star Wars, an homage to old sci-fi serials and inspired by samurai films and the work of Akira Kurosawa, was a huge financial distribution risk. It didn't help out that Star Wars was a sci-fi film, which was relegated to B-movie status. The era of New Hollywood, with films as Taxi Driver, All the President's Men, and Rocky, all dominated the box office during this time. Hollywood executives and studios alike didn't think much of Star Wars. Not much needs to be said about what happened after Star Wars came out. It was a huge box office success and changed the cinematic landscape, with studios trying to find an answer. One of the studios was Disney, and they answered with The Black Hole. This 1979 film was to be a sci-fi disaster film and was one of Disney's most ambitious at the time. In addition to the film, it would also be brought to the parks, with it being the most ambitious rides Disney had ever built, a military flight simulator that was intended to simulate scenes from the film. However, the film did not perform to Disney's expectations, and with the high price tag of the Black Hole attraction, the idea was almost abandoned. In 1986, after a successful collaboration with the release of Captain EO in the parks, George Lucas and Disney began talks of a Star Wars attraction in Anaheim. Finally, after some deliberation, Disney purchased 4 military-grade flight simulators for $500,000 each, and the process of bringing Star Wars to the parks began. Lucas's own Industrial Light and Magic began work on developing the ride experience. The original Star Tours film was created before the advent of CGI films, which meant that everything on the ride was a practical effect in some form. As if that wasn't hard enough, the first-person perspective of the film meant that the most spectacular effects all needed to be part of a single, continuous shot. The original Star Tours film, created by ILM, was nothing short of cinematic magic. As for the attraction's plot, in the aftermath of the Battle of Endor, tours across the galaxy have been made safer. As a result, you've been invited on a tour to the forest moon of Endor. Unfortunately, your pilot, R3X24, or Rex, voiced by Paul Rubens, is a new pilot with some dodgy programming, sending you on a wild recreation of the famous Death Star run. When it opened in 1987, Star Tours was a major hit, attracting thousands of guests to Disneyland as the hype surrounding Star Wars attraction started to spread. Identical versions of the attraction opened in Tokyo Disneyland and Hollywood Studios in 1989, with Disneyland Paris getting its own in 1992. To date, only Hong Kong and Shanghai Disneyland don't have an iteration of Star Tours. Meanwhile, Disney MGM Studios, which is now called Hollywood Studios, was in a bit of trouble. It was meant to compete with studio-themed Universal Studios, but guests were not coming in flocks like Disney had hoped. However, this was proved to be good timing, as a new Star Wars event was announced to bring in those flocks of fans that Disney had hoped for. Starting in 1997, Star Wars Season was introduced at Disney MGM Studios, with special events on 4 consecutive weekends from May to June. It was like a huge Star Wars convention right in the middle of the park. Guests could dress up as their favorite characters, attend special panels from the favorite characters, and become immersed in a huge Star Wars-like party in Central Florida. The event also featured precursors to some contemporary Star Wars attractions, including a meet and greet with walk-around characters like Darth Vader and Chewbacca. There was one show that, while originally limited to the special event, soon became a permanent fixture at the parks. The Jedi Training Academy was originally a temporary installation during the Star Wars Weekend festivities, though the basic premise has remained the same since the beginning. During the show, children are invited to be Jedi younglings and participate in a training session with prop lightsabers and robes. After some basic training, Darth Vader and Darth Maul would suddenly appear along with 2 stormtroopers and attack the class, leading to a lightsaber battle between the Jedi younglings and Darth Vader before the Tooth Sith were forced to flee. When Disney purchased Star Wars in 2012, however, the Disney parks would remain relatively calm until August 2015, when Disney announced their most ambitious project ever, a fully immersive land inspired by the new trilogy, allowing guests to ride the Millennium Falcon, build your own lightsaber and droid, dine and hang out with friends in a Mos Eisley-like cantina, and even join the Resistance. Finally, in May 2019, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge opened at the Disneyland Park, allowing guests to step into the world of Star Wars for the first time. The park represented the most ambitious, immersive project Disney ever built, with every element being a painstaking recreation of the Star Wars universe. Unlike previous attractions, which included nods to Disney in the form of cheeky souvenirs, everything about Batuu is all Star Wars all the time. The next step in the Galactic Edge project? Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser. This first-of-its-kind immersive hotel will allow guests to spend 2 nights in the world of Star Wars, taking a galactic cruise to Batuu that becomes entangled in the war with the Resistance and the First Order. Also, fans of Galactic Nights and Star Wars weekends have a glimmer of hope, as Disney has plans to bring a similar event to Disneyland for Star Wars Celebration 2020, featuring an exclusive Black Spire Outpost celebration. Disney isn't going to be done with Star Wars anytime soon.